Good evening and welcome to tonight's Veteran Readers Theater, a conversation on heroism, service, and war. I'm Lisa Carrico, Director of Veteran Programs for the Missouri Humanities. We are a member-supported organization, and our mission is dedicated to enriching lives and strengthening communities by connecting Missourians with the people, places, and ideas that shape our society. Since 2011, we have partnered with organizations across the state to provide veterans, military personnel, and their families with an outlet for self-expression through writing. Our veteran programs include writing workshops, public readings, a Proud to Be podcast, and an annual publication called Proud to Be Writing by American Warriors, now in its 10th volume and recently released. Together, these programs encourage hundreds of veterans each year to tell their stories. It is with great honor that I introduce tonight's performance in collaboration with the Kansas City Veterans Writing Team. For several years now, we have partnered to offer a fall writing workshop in the Kansas City area to help participants gain the tools and confidence to tell their stories. Tonight's readings will showcase veterans and family members who participated in this month's virtual workshop, and will be moderated by Creative Director George Pettigrew. George is the Executive Vice President and historian of the Alexander Madison chapter of Kansas City Buffalo Soldiers, certified storyteller, and a Navy veteran. Whether you're watching on Zoom or Facebook Live, we invite you to be part of the conversation. In the Zoom chat box or in the Facebook comments, feel free to ask questions and include your thoughts on how you define a hero. After the reading, we will try to address as many questions as possible. Please be mindful of your questions, as we would like to create a thoughtful and meaningful dialogue in a safe space. At the conclusion of the program, a link to a program survey will pop up on your screen. Your feedback helps us shape future programs. If you enjoy this program, we invite you to learn about our membership program. Benefits include free books, discounted program tickets, and access to member-only events. This Saturday is our annual gala featuring guest speaker Lillian Cunningham, Washington Post journalist and host of the Constitutional podcast. The gala includes a virtual or in-person ticket option, and everyone is invited to participate in our gala's online auction. The funds we raise from our gala and membership help support events like tonight. To attend or learn more, visit mohumanities.org. Without further ado, George, take it away.
The act of writing is all about discovery. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 4th Annual Veterans Readers Theater, presented by the Kansas City Veterans Writing Team. I am George Pettigrew, a member of the team, a Navy veteran, and tonight your moderator. We wish to recognize and thank our faithful sponsor that makes tonight possible and other initiatives throughout this year possible. Tonight's work is presented by the Missouri Humanities Council, along with sponsorship from the Moral Injury Association of America and individual sponsors. The stories, poems, prose, and narratives presented tonight come from veterans and family members, each with a story to tell in their own words and in their own way. Although the stories are sometimes difficult to share, these brave people have gathered the skills and support in a mutually caring and safe environment to develop the works that they are here to present. Furthermore, thanks to the many workshops and monthly critique group meetings, you will witness the masterful results of many hours, days, and months of effort. We are veterans and family members of veterans standing before you tonight, sharing a story or two about our experiences, whether direct or indirect, of those who served. We are not polished professionals, but what is offered is from the heart. The objective of the Kansas City Veterans Writers Team is to help vets writing about their military experiences to begin the process of owning their stories, and by doing so, possibly negotiate their way around serious barriers. Through workshops, monthly veteran critique groups, and other literary events, the participants explore the many approaches possible to create personal stories, poems, and narratives. From planning in 2013 for the first writing workshop to pulling it off in April of 2014, the program continues to grow. More than 2,000 vets and family members have attended day-long workshops and multi-week writing sessions held the last 5 years in the fall. Many graduates of the workshops now meet on a monthly basis in a structured writing critique group, continuing to hone their skills and to share their personal stories in a safe environment, offering the camaraderie of military life. Each reader for tonight has participated in a 3-week series of veteran writing workshops, learning the fundamentals of composing poetry and prose. This performance showcases the reader's military experiences in written word, at times raw in nature, and highlighting the conflict, fear, concern, humor, and excitement that can result from service to our country, as well as in everyday challenging situations. This is but a backdrop to the original works presented. On this day, November 18th, we witness another, albeit personal, milestone in the journey of better understanding and appreciation for those that served, and offering a sincerely humble thank you for your service. Now, with that, they will share their work as part of an original script uniting all of their pieces. Tonight, you will witness a chorus read by fellow team members, Nick Lopez, our leader and a Marine veteran, Dr. H.C. Palmer, an Army surgeon in Vietnam, and the daughter of an Army veteran, Dr. Virginia Brackett. She's our script developer and a family member of veterans. Their lines were taken directly from comments made by workshop participants. This peek behind the curtains into the thoughts shared during the workshops adds and reflects the process of leading to tonight's presentation. We also want to recognize Susan Howard, a veteran family member and ad hoc team member, who will read 2 original works. The classic hero's journey involves, above all, sacrifice. It can be described in several steps: a call to adventure, a refusal to go, crossing the threshold, battling monsters, internal and external, having a guide to help along the way, and hopefully a return home. Sometimes the return doesn't go so smoothly, but sometimes the hero brings home a gift to share, riches or knowledge. The most important gift a hero can offer is a story to tell.
The following statements were shared in a writing workshop. Today, heroism and sacrifice can be recognized in everyday activities. We must all tell the stories. How can others find interest in my words, which are not their words? For the first time, I wrote about Vietnam, and it changed the way I felt about it. I wrote poetry. I want to write a memoir. I want to write about my memories and the way I felt then.
The act of writing is all about discovery.
I'm James Hugo Riffenbark. I served as an Army photographer stateside Vietnam and in Thailand. From street racing to flying cobras. Tom's dad worked as a maintenance mechanic for TWA. At home, he and Tom worked on cars in their backyard. If there wasn't a car in the backyard, they were probably out test driving it. In high school, Tom had a '65 Impala convertible. He got into a handful of drag races on Meyer Boulevard each day, winning most of them, even with 4 of us in the car. By the time he received his draft notification, early '68, his driver's license had been pulled for too many speeding tickets. Tom and his girlfriend Sue got married the night before he was to report at the induction center. Sue drove away from the church, grinding the gears. We all laughed. After basic, Tom was sent to a fort in Georgia to learn to both fix and fly the Bell AH-1 Cobra. He also gave officers their check flights on the Cobra. In Vietnam, his job was being flown out to down Cobras. If it was safe, the Huey landed and Tom went to work fixing the Cobra. Then he flew it back. If the area was hot, Tom was lowered down from the Huey. Then the Huey would fly overhead, its door gunners protecting him while he worked. If it couldn't be saved, the sensitive equipment was stripped out, and Tom set the charge to blow the Cobra up. Sometimes the enemy was waiting for the rescue helicopter to arrive. A second Cobra was then called in to handle the VC or NVA troops. While Tom was in Vietnam, Sue gave birth to a son. They named him Tommy. When Tom came home, he was different. He didn't talk about Vietnam. He smoked and drank a lot more and was always nervous. Tom was an E5. He wanted to re-enlist. Sue said, "It's me or the Army." He got a job with TWA as a mechanic. She still filed for a divorce. I left for Vietnam after Thanksgiving, November '71. While I was there, my father died. I flew home for his funeral. As people walked by Dad's coffin, I saw Tom. He was with a strawberry blonde and a small boy in diapers. "Can you all stay so we can talk?" "Sure, we'll be in the back row." Tom introduced me to Beverly and Jacob, their son, a cute little guy who was 8 months old. Tom said they had met in church and really hit it off. Beverly was a stay-at-home mom taking care of Jacob and selling her baked goods at the church. I had not seen Tom look so happy and healthy. He said he gave up the booze and fast driving. "Beverly, they say the hero always gets the girl in the end. And I guess you're that girl. I have you and Jacob to thank for taking care of this guy the way he took care of his cobras. Thanks so much." Back in Vietnam, I was happy that Tom finally had a beautiful, loving family.
How do you define a hero or the act of heroism?
The individuals or group willing to take action instead of being spectators.
Someone who runs toward danger rather than away from it. I learned this definition from Military Wives.
Someone who demonstrates without thought concern for another person.
Heroism. an act of going above and beyond what is required to risk to oneself for the benefit of others. The individual that I've met in my life that most fit this definition and perception of heroism was my platoon leader during my second deployment, Lieutenant Michael Fashnot.
Mel Carney, U.S. Army Infantry, First Lieutenant. Courage is grace under fire, a quote by Ernest Hemingway. May 1966, Fort Riley, Kansas. The Army brought 120 men together for infantry basic training. As part of their training, they would learn skills of the infantrymen and to look after fellow soldiers. Carl Evans was in Scott Ledbetter's platoon. One night, Scott was scopping polish on his low quarters. Carl, who was watching him, said, "White folks cannot shine shoes." Scott's reply, "Sit your black butt down and show me how it's done." That short conversation began a friendship that had them mopping floors, cleaning latrines, and training as a team for the rest of the cycle. On a night, forced march, Scott fell asleep walking. Carl, who was watching out for him, kept him from falling into a ditch. At the end of basic, Scott, Carl, and all the trainees were no longer poor, rich, black, white, or Hispanic. They were infantrymen. They had the backs of fellow soldiers. Scott was sent to advanced infantry training at Fort Ord and officer candidate school at Fort Benning. His respect for fellow soldiers deepened with each new post. In OCS, he learned to command men in combat and to take care of those men. After graduation, he was assigned to an infantry company as a platoon leader. He served Company B, 1st to 6th Infantry in the jungles of Vietnam. He had a chance to take care of a fellow soldier on Hill 352 in the Quezon Son Valley. Doc blocked and Scott saw a man get hit in a hail of AK-47 rounds. Scott called for covering fire before the two men ran out into the killing zone. They found the man lying on the ground, blood covering his right chest. A burst from an AK-47 cut down on them. Doc yelled, "I'm hit." Scott looked him up and down and says, "You ain't damn bleeding. Let's get the hell out of here." With rifle fire zipping by their heads and bouncing off the rocks, they carried the man on a zigzag path back to their perimeter. They set the man down behind a boulder. Doc and a second medic began treating the man's wounds. Now, neither Scott nor Doc knew the man's name. He was a member of Charlie Company who had been sent to Hill 352 to support Bravo Company. The men had to run to his aid to save his life. There were no heroics that day. No medals would be issued. None were expected. They were happy that the man lived and was medevaced. Oh, and the next morning, Doc walked up to Scott and pulled out and opened his billfold. In the picture section was a shiny steel shaft from an armor-piercing AK-47 round. Scott shook his head and said, "Doc, billfolds are not eligible to receive a Purple Heart." Two men who had looked death in the eye and walked away found a reason to smile.
A hero doesn't need recognition.
Vulnerability is necessary for healing, whether you're a hero or not. And vulnerability always makes the best writing.
Edmund Brackett, U.S. Army. Life is good and my future bright. Like most of the 2.7 million people who served in Vietnam, I grew up in a poor working class family, the only child of a widowed mother and the grandchild of immigrants. Though lacking formal education, they all fully embraced the American dream and raised me with a strong work ethic and unwavering respect for the flag. I would register for the draft when I turned 18 and then apply for a student deferment when I enrolled in college. I was living the dream. Life was good and my future bright. I dearly loved my grandmother and she doted on me, her only grandchild, and the first person in her family to graduate high school. I remember sitting in her living room in the summer of 1964. I was telling her about my plans to enroll in college when a TV commentator in an adjacent room announced news of North Vietnam's purported attack on the USS Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin. My stomach sank. My lot was cast. Robert McNamara and his generals finally had the excuse they needed to unleash the war machine that would destroy the lives of millions of Americans and Southeast Asians. Nearly 5 years passed before my time of reckoning. Although I was convinced that US involvement was both illegal and immoral, the war raging in Vietnam had little impact on my naive and painfully provincial life. I earned my BA and was admitted to graduate school in a university located nearly 1,000 miles from home. In preparation for my departure, I informed my local draft board of my status change, provided them my new address, and again applied for a student deferment. I completed all required coursework during my first year of residence and plan to return the following academic year to resume my teaching duties and write my thesis. Life was good and my future bright. I had already begun investigating doctoral programs when I received a frantic telephone call from my mother. She had been informed by a local attorney and family friend that my local draft board had begun actions that would result in my arrest for draft evasion for failure to report for my induction physical. I had indeed failed to report, but only because I never received the order. Unfortunately for me and countless other young men across the country, many local draft boards exercised the zeal of a grand inquisitor. I had three choices: volunteer for the draft, do nothing and face arrest, or become an expatriate. The last two choices would have imposed shame and humiliation on my family. And so, to spare them, I chose to contribute to the prosecution of an unjust war. Though 50 years have passed, I am still haunted by the words of the Nobel laureate who praised the warrior whose strength is not to fight.
How do you define a hero or the act of heroism?
Perseverance in the face of danger or hardship.
Coming to the aid of someone in harm's way.
One person acting in a moment to aid, assist, uplift a group of people that challenges that person's safety. This definition comes from my chance meeting of a World War II bombardier's grave located in a tiny Slovakian village.
Person who goes beyond what they believe about their own self, something they would not consider they are capable of.
Heather Smoot, U.S. Air Force. My destiny. I never signed up to persevere through a harrowing 3 years. I'd hoped to establish my name rather than achieve notorious fame. My enemies wore the same clothes. My career they managed to dispose. It was a most disappointing tale, and though I often felt frail, I coped with inner strength despite the extravagant lengths they went to ruin my life, causing me a multitude of strife. I experienced a nervous breakdown, but bravely stood my ground, never letting them see me sweat in spite of their all too real threats. With effort, I was honorably discharged and with a 4-year degree was armed to take the civilian world by storm. After my ordeal, I was newly formed. I served the military with pride. To its rules and regulations, I complied. Though some didn't treat me nobly, I soldiered through misfortune boldly. With spirit low and head held high, I bid the service a rueful goodbye. I never set out to be an unsung hero, but enduring my trials, I did grow. I vowed to never sign my life away. With my destiny, I'd have the last say.
How do you define a hero or the act of heroism?
Service to others while accepting personal risk.
makes me think of my son's journey to the Army, his subsequent career-ending injury, and later his establishment of a nonprofit to eradicate landmines and other armaments in countries where we fought.
I am thinking of my deceased husband, a Vietnam combat veteran, as my hero and how he fit into these steps in his journey. Can the boon be a learned life experience that he shares with his children?
I think the journey might not be linear.
Catherine Iwadi, U.S. Army Medical Services. In Brazina Woods, Chapter 1. Hey, Mom, the plane's ready. Are you ready? Let's go. Where is that woman? Mom, Jimmy, we shouldn't fly today. It's not a good day to fly. Look at the birds. They sit on the ground. The trees. They don't fly. Better tomorrow. I'll fly with you tomorrow. She climbed the front stairs and sat down in her porch chair. There weren't any clouds in the sky, not a breeze. The birds are not flying. Jimmy, wake up. It's time to go. The birds are not flying. The birds are not flying. The birds. Jimmy, come on, man, wake up. What? Never mind. I said, nothing, Walt. Jimmy, forget the birds. We are the birds. Get your stuff. Mission briefing in 20 minutes. While packing my flight bag, I couldn't shake Mom's mourning. She was born in Czechoslovakia and immigrated to America, pregnant with me. As a little boy, she would touch the middle of her forehead and then touch the middle of mine and say, I see you. If it was an eye she pointed to, it never opened. She didn't say much about her life before America. Mom didn't teach me her language. She spoke Czech when she was angry. Otherwise, she spoke English with a sexy Slavic accent. When she spoke of my father, it was only to say he liked to fly planes. I saw a photo taken of her on her wedding day. My mom looked like a queen. When she smiled, that beautiful smile of hers, she hinted, she teased at knowledge beyond my years. For my 10th birthday, she blindfolded me and we walked hand in hand to the barn. Okay, Jimmy, take off the blindfold. The door was opened and sitting just over the threshold was a plane, a 1932 de Havilland Gypsy Moth, the sweetest ride I had ever seen photographed in a magazine. Mom's friend Joseph took me for my first plane ride that morning. He came over every 3 days to give me a lesson. Mom smiled and took joy in my joy. She never told me where the plane came from or where the money came from to buy it. She would answer magic, which is the same reply to every question she didn't want to answer. The woman kept powerful secrets. After high school graduation, I stayed on the farm to help Mom bring in the early harvest. Our ally partners in Europe needed our help with the war against fascism. Everyone I knew from high school had joined the military. Once the harvest was finished, I hugged Mom goodbye and enlisted in the Air Force as a field officer bombardier.
John Michael Johnson, U.S. Army. A Soldier's Last Day, 1915. Dark, filthy water floods the trench, rusting nails, tetanus hammer. Barefaced youth can barely stammer, giving his poisoned leg a wrench, coughing thickened blood, while the stench so foul, pleasing death's vanity, turns what's left of his sanity into a blackened laugh, morose. A rattle. He leaps, comatose, thankful, into eternity.
The most important gift a hero can offer is a story to tell.
Dale Eichmeyer, U.S. Army, The Cemetery. The True drove in Ed's Pontiac. At George's direction, Ed turned, driving under an arched gate that said Calvary Catholic Cemetery. A white marble headstone stood in front of George and Ed. Chiseled block letters said, James C. Hurst, Sergeant, U.S. Army, 32nd Infantry. Bronze Star Medal, Purple Heart. Korea. May 19th, 1929, December 5th, 1950. Ed shivered and fought against a wave of dizziness as his lips quivered. Lost in a storm, he looked up through the canopy of an oak tree, searching the sky for answers. None came. He sucked the cool air in deeply, paused, then blew it out. And he inhaled again, holding a bit longer and blowing more forcefully. After a third breath, he coughed and cleared his throat. Where's Jim's flag? George turned to Ed, placing his hand on Ed's shoulder. Flag? His casket flag. What did you do with it? George pulled his hand back and shook his head, put it away in a chest. It was just too much for Beth, so I figured. Ed stood straighter, strength in his voice. Jim wants you to display it in the VFW hall, in a case with his name on a brass plaque. He doesn't want it hidden away in some lonely corner of your house to be cried over and eventually forgotten. He wants his flag and the flags of others displayed in the hall, so their spirits stay a part of the community long after you and I are gone. Ed saw a light flicker in George's eyes. Ed continued, you know, someday, maybe a young Boy Scout and an Eagle Court of Honor will look at Jim's flag and ask, who was this? Tell me about him. Maybe a young bride at her wedding reception will kiss her fingertips and then touch the flag and say, I love you, Dad. Ed reached out and ran his fingers across the marble, drawing strength from its coolness. And on Memorial Day, he wants the flags put on poles with the vets' names on them, and then line the street with the flags, year after year after year. Ed wiped his eyes and then gripped the tombstone. Eventually, they'll just be names. Then their names will be forgotten. And they'll just be old, faded flags. But you know, every Memorial Day, when folks see the flags in the streets, they'll be reminded of the sacrifices these men made. It's a fine idea, Ed. It's not my idea, it's Jim's, something he wants. A white handkerchief emerged from George's pocket and he wiped his eyes. I'll make it happen. It was now Ed's turn to place his hand on George's shoulder. The two turned and walked silently to the car. The only sound, a pair of squirrels arguing over something only they knew.
Pardon me, Marie, you're muted.
Marie Steiner, veteran family member, Heroism and Service, 50 veterans. My father, Sergeant Joseph A. Gonzalez, a World War II Army veteran, tank crewman, was severely wounded during the European Theater of Operation 1944. My father lived the remainder of his life disabled from his wounds. In my journey to research veterans in our family, I learned of my father's heroism. He received a Purple Heart and Bronze Star, posthumous. In my husband and my families, we have 16 veterans. I became part of the Midwest Genealogy Center, Mid-Continent Public Library in Independence, Missouri, Oral History Project for Veterans. The oral history is unique. The veteran may be present, may meet via telephone, or use a handheld recorder, which is part of Tell Me a Story oral history program kit. This allowed me to fulfill one particular veteran's request to meet at a place of his choice, as he had numerous scrapbooks and memorabilia he wanted to share for this interview. We agreed to meet at City Hall, where he is well known in the community. Although the listener cannot see his shared memorabilia, I described the items that he treasured. This interview had to be completed in 3 sessions, each over 45 minutes. This veteran is 90+ years and still enjoys being a part of the community. Each veteran receives questions to be asked and has the option to strike out questions. The veteran receives a copy of the end recording with the choice of a CD or USB. The interview becomes part of the Veteran Oral History Program with the veteran's permission. This stays on file for future generations who now step back into the life of the veteran during their time of war or service. Whenever I meet a veteran, I thank him or her for their service. I then ask if they would honor me with an interview. I often receive, "You're welcome, happy to have served," but no further encouragement to schedule an interview. I never become discouraged when my interview request is not met with a yes, but I feel good acknowledging the veteran who served, as every American should do. My father, stepfather, 5 uncles, and 2 brother-in-laws, all veterans, have passed. My display of our combined family's military history is currently on display at the Midwest Genealogy Center. I continue to interview family and friends and feel honored when an interview is granted. I reached out to members of the Kansas City Veterans Writing Group, and several have responded to be interviewed. My goal in life is to interview 50 veterans. My first veteran interview was my spouse, Danny. In his interview, he shared with me the following, and now I wish to share his words with you. But military life is not the way for a young person to start a career. The time I spent in the service, I would not trade. However, I would not do it again. My husband served during the Vietnam War. Our boys at that time were drafted if they did not enlist and were not honored when they returned home. My definition of heroism, one who has served, a veteran.
Pardon me, Virginia, are you muted?
Thank you. In his workshop session, the veteran poet James Cherry asked our participants to write ekphrastic poetry. Ekphrastic poetry, he explained, is written in reaction to a work of art. One of the earliest and most commonly cited forms of ekphrasis occurs in the Iliad, a hero's journey epic poem by Greek poet Homer. Homer provides a lengthy, poetic, discursive account of the elaborate scenes embossed on the shield of Achilles. It should be no surprise then that the term ekphrasis derives from Greek, where it literally means description. Veterans were asked to create an ekphrastic poem after seeing Vincent van Gogh's painting Starry Night. However, Cherry said, our workshop poem should not simply describe the work of art, but answer questions such as, is there a story being told? What emotion does the artwork make you feel? An ekphrastic poem should pull something out of the artwork that will add another dimension to our understanding of what the artist has created.
Some believe the hero only completes his or her mission when they return home with treasure to share. Literature teaches us that the true treasure a hero bequeaths is a story of their journey. Although they may conclude their journey successfully, veterans can be left to deal lifelong with negative mental and spiritual effects. As our workshop participants considered Van Gogh's Starry Night, they had the opportunity to reflect in writing on the amazing ability of the human spirit to produce worthy art, even as the artist suffers. Regardless of its form, art gives stories to its audience, making that abundant wealth available to all.
Remarks made following our workshop viewing of Starry Night. A town is protected by hills that surround it as a storm passes over. The town is dark. There is light in the sky above it, but no intersection between the light and the dark. The artist helps us understand that the world that swirls around us, even in darkness, we see brightness.
Starry, starry night. Dizzy, falling, rising higher, lower. No, I cannot tell you. I search through midnight cobalt blue. I search through yellow orange as fire, twisting, dancing atop this pyre of moon glow, bulging to bursting or out of breath, so dry, thirsting. Here on the other side of day, midnight enhancing the display of these shiny stars a-whirling.
Susan Howard, veteran family member. Vincent. The chill night air sucks breath away like death. Stars pierce melancholy and light the darkness of soul that wears the cloak of insignificance, urging me to climb an unseen path but trust they will always be there.
Starry, Starry Night by Van Gogh. In the quiet of the night, my mind moves with might. Synapses ping in my head, filling me with fear and dread. What does my future hold? Wonder if I'll grow old. Even the evening sky has wings, conjuring up so many things. The moon glow lights the sky. It has the boldness to fly high above the still town as the stars frolic around at the speed of my thoughts. But at what human cost? I beg for silence within.
The act of writing is all about discovery.
The meteor shower. We stepped out into the chill November night air. My 13-year-old son had asked me to take him in the early hours of morning to watch the once-in-a-lifetime meteor shower. To be honest, I wasn't keen on driving 45 minutes to get away from city lights, just so I could get a crick in my neck as I shivered in the dark along some backwoods road. I sipped coffee as we drove, my son staring out the window. "There's one," he exclaimed, breaking the silence. I glanced toward the sky but saw nothing. "I imagine we'll have to get a little further out to see much," I replied. I had doubts about how much celestial activity we'd see. My son, though, had wanted to chance rising early to see if the prior day's overcast skies had cleared enough to catch falling stars. We finally arrived at a county park I thought would be far enough from the city lights to enable the best viewing possible within a reasonable driving distance. Taking camp chairs out of the trunk, we sat down, covered ourselves with a blanket, and turned our attention toward the ebony expanse. No sooner had we done so when there appeared streaks of light flashing overhead. It was as though someone wielding a piece of chalk was repeatedly and impetuously slashing at a blackboard. "Oh, cool, that is so awesome." He spoke the words almost reverently, shivering as he stared upward. As the meteors burned up in the atmosphere, the display was breathtaking. Suddenly, a huge streak flashed directly above us, appearing so close it seemed as though we should have heard it. "Oh, wow." As the unexpected words escaped my mouth, I realized what I almost caused my son to miss. For the next hour, we sat craning our necks upward, watching in awe the wonder unfolding before our eyes. We talked about the science behind the phenomenon, but also how amazingly creative God is. Before I realized how much time had passed, the eastern sky began to change. The inky black was fading into a deep slate blue as stars dimmed on the horizon. We packed up and began the drive home, chilled, but still talking about the big one. The night continued to lighten and we grew silent for a while, both of us lost in our thoughts. Mine centered on gratitude for having had the opportunity to share the experience with my son. I was so glad I had said yes when I initially wanted to say no. Thanks, Mom. I really appreciate your driving me out to see that. You're welcome. I'm glad we got up to see it. But all I could think was, thank you, God, for reminding me once again what really matters.
The act of writing is all about discovery.
Ars Poetica. Poetry is the whispered shout of thoughts thought while walking the street, tapping the dance of shuffling feet, raising questions. What's it about? This and that you think as you doubt what you really know what it means. Nothing is ever what it seems, but somehow a poem makes it work. This life or love or song or crook, twisting thoughts into salty dreams.
This concludes our presentation for this evening. And we've enjoyed also your participation through the chat. We've had statements like Kelly saying someone, this is her definition of a hero, someone who shows up regardless of the difficult journey. That's worthy of a poem itself, Kelly. And Candace, a hero is someone who is willing to put another's life before their own. And finally, Deb. Deb wrote that an individual who puts others before themselves without thought or expectation of reward. Really want to appreciate all of you for being with us this evening. We know your time is valuable and we hope we've been able to add some value to the time you've shared with us. Right now, I'd like to turn it back over to Lisa Carrico from the Missouri Humanities Council. Lisa?
Thank you so much, George. If anybody has any questions for our panelists, feel free to put those in the chat. We're getting a lot of great comments. Frank Higgins, thank you for watching. He says, I've enjoyed this. Thank you for everyone who participated and those who watched and listened. We also had another comment from Cherry. What an honor it was to facilitate a workshop with such talented writers. I learned much. So both Frank and James Cherry were leaders for our workshop. I feel that it is a give and take exchange during our workshops between our educators and our writers. I'm not seeing any questions, so I can go ahead and conclude tonight. Thank you, George, for moderating tonight's program, and Virginia for putting together such a thoughtful and beautiful script. Thank you to our 9 readers for putting your words on paper and having the courage to share your stories. Thanks to Nick and HC and the whole KC Veterans Writing team for making tonight's event possible. And special thanks to all of you who attended in support of veteran writers. And thank you again for all of your great comments. We would love to hear your thoughts on tonight's reading. A link to the program survey will show up in the browser when the webinar ends. If you'd like to learn more about our programs, including our annual gala taking place this Saturday, please visit mohumanities.org. And I hope tonight's program has maybe inspired a little heroism and discovery in each one of you. Thank you and good night.